Yo, what's up guys, I'm Yannick from the tpschool, and in this video I will show you how to make future bass. The end result will sound like this. In this video I'm using our brand new pack called Millennium. It's an Millennium inspired preset and sample pack, and it will definitely help you to take your future bass tracks to the next level. You can check out the pack yourself by using the link in the description, and any support is always appreciated. Anyways guys, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that yet, and let's get straight into this. Let's start by creating some drop chords first. I will be using these chords and they sound like this. So they are pretty big and emotional. I will be using them in this tutorial. I'm using 4 layers of chords, and let's start with the first one. It's called Lead Say in Silent. And they sound pretty short. I'm going to create a rhythm with these chords, just a pretty basic rhythm. And I'm using the tool chop for that. It's Alt plus U. So this will chop up the notes, and you can select how fast you want the notes to be. So I'm going to leave it at this one. I'm going to cut out a few notes like this one. Now let's copy these chords into the other layers. The second one is Lead Burn, and it sounds like this. Just a basic Garrix type of lead. Then the third one is this one. It's Lead Beautiful. As you can see, it's a big supersaw with a lot of voices, and it will definitely make the chords sound big. And then the last lead is a Serum one. It's called Lead Future What. So let's process these leads. I'm going to start with the first one. It's a silent one. Let's process these chords. I'm going to start with this silent one. So I'm going to apply an EQ to this, and with this EQ I'm going to cut out some low end of the chords. And boost some of the high mid end. And I'm going to add a stereo shaper on this, which will make the lead sound stereo. I'm going to move the delay button to the right and the phase button to the left. So as you can hear, it sounds wider right now. Let's move on to the second lead. Make sure you put an EQ on it to cut out a lot of unwanted frequencies. And this chord will take care of the mid frequencies in the drop. So let's boost some of the mid frequencies. And cut out some of the high end. And I'm going to put a compressor on this. I'm using the glue. So let's select a ratio of 2 and move the threshold. A bit of makeup gain. And I want this chord to be mono. So what you can do to make something mono in FL Studio, you can go to the mixer and you see this button over here. And you can drag it to the right to make it mono, or left to make it stereo. Then a third one. which is a very big supersaw and will take care of the high end of the track. So let's boot some of the treble frequencies. And this lead should be in stereo, so let's add a stereo shaper to make it even wider. And then the last chords, the serum one, which is a typical future bass chord. And I'm going to put a camel crusher on this one to give it a bit of distortion and compression. All leads sound together pretty dry, so what I'm going to do is to add a reverb on this. So I created this bus where all the chords go into, so let's add a reverb to this. For future bass you usually want a big reverb, so let's create a big size along the K. Now it's time for one of the most important things, and that is sidechain for these chords. Let's open up a kickstart. There are two ways to add sidechain to the chords. If you work in 140 BPM, make sure to set it to a half note. But if you work in 70, which is the half of 140, you can work in 1/4. Now let's move on to the bass. I'm going to copy the bass notes of the chords to make my bass like this. Let's put it in a new pattern. First bass I'm using is a serum one. It's called Bass Go. Like this. So let's put the bass in here. And the second one is this one. It's a silent one. And we must not forget our sub bass, which is this serum one. It's just a pretty basic sub bass. So let me show you how I process the bass. For the first one, this silent one, I just added a pretty basic EQ. I boosted some of the mid frequencies and the high end and cut some of the treble frequencies. I also added this effector, which gives it a really cool effect. This is without, and this is with. Then the second one, the serum one, I just added a basic EQ and a little bit of distortion with this camel crusher. And the sub bass, I cut it almost all of the high end till around 90 Hz. And I added this camel crusher for a bit of distortion. What I'm going to do now is create a top lead, and this will just make sure the chords pop out a little bit more. It's this one. It's called flute voice, and it's almost like it's a flute. So let's process this one. I'm going to add a EQ. And a reverb to make it a little bit less dry. And last but not least, some sidechaining with just a basic kickstart. And now comes a really interesting part, and that are the vocal chops that we'll be playing on top of the chords. I used the Fruity Slicer for this, and I put an a cappella I found on Splice in there and just pitch it up. So let's make a melody with this. I made this melody and it sounds like this. I'm going to layer this with another layer of vocal chops. These are just the same vocal chops but then pitched an octave higher. Let's start with an EQ first. And a camel crusher for some distortion. What you can do to give your vocal chops a really cool effect is adding a bit crusher. So I'm going to do that now. Let's select a reduction of around 6 samples. And just a tiny bit, so I'm going to lower the mix of this. You can barely hear it, but it gives a cool effect. And let's add some reverb now. And for sidechaining, I'm using the LFO tool for this. Let's select the rate to 1 bar and move this button to the left. And for the second layer of the vocal chops, I'm just going to copy the other mixer track of the other vocal chops. For the drums, you want something that sounds similar to this. As you can see, the snare I'm using consists of 3 layers. The first one is this one. Second one sounds like this. And then the last one is a clap. Also, a trick that I'm doing is to add a reversed kick. Elenium does this a lot of times, and it really sucks you back to the melody. Then there are some fills over here, which make sure there is something between the gaps of the chords. And then some basic effects like down filters, up filters, and a impact. There's also a hi-hat loop that's placed in the second part. And it just adds a bit of groove to the track. The end result will sound like this. You can check out the pack yourself on our website tpschool.com, and any support is always appreciated. So hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know what you think of this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.